I'm going to talk about the things that are universal for all classes, whether we are talking about preschool or we are talking all the way up to the high school. Note that most of the schools that we all went to when we were children were built and designed for people or built and designed for students that they had never met. So they didn't know who you were, they didn't know what skills you had or what questions you had, but instead the curriculum was typically done before you showed up. But at ISLA we flip that. And how do we flip it? How is it possible that we can personalize learning to all of our students who come from 40 different countries? Well, we do it in this way, and I want to talk to you about it today. Number one, we all, no matter what grade level we are in, are always in the same cycle of inquiry, and we call that a unit of investigation. Right now, all of our students are in their very first unit, and this year they will do 6 units of investigation. Each unit is 6 weeks long, except for the very first one, which is 7 weeks, because we like to have that first week, last week, for orientation, late arrivals, make sure we get the classroom set up and everything. But this week technically is what we would call week 1. And in every 6-week unit of investigation, the first week is always all about the hook. And the hook is about previewing what we're going to learn in the unit. It's about finding out what the students already know about the big unit theme. And it's also finding out what they want to know. We ask them their questions and we design from there. The other thing we do, because obviously it is possible that some students may not know a lot about it or may think that that topic is not something that excites them, is that we do activities that try to make sure they understand why we're in the unit. We call those activities hook activities, but the purpose of them is not to grade the students, but instead to make sure that they're excited, they want to learn this, they have more questions, and they know why this matters. That is week 1, and that's what we're kind of doing right now in our elementary and primary units on community life and our secondary units on cultural identity and folklore. In weeks 2, 3, and 4, we focus on 3 essential questions. And I just skipped one of the important words, which is the big idea. Maybe you've heard that, maybe you've seen it in one of your teacher's letters, but the big idea is a sentence that is the overarching statement that connects everything we do in the unit. It's a very simple sentence. It is a sentence that a 5-year-old or a PhD student should both be able to understand and discuss. It is not meant to trick a student. It is not meant to be Googleable. It is meant to be a concept that a student can come to understand. And so we have this big overarching broad idea. You'll see how big it is. You'll see how many possibilities it could be. But in order to shine a light on what we're actually going to investigate, we have the 3 essential questions. And each week, in weeks 2, 3, and 4, we spend all of our time doing one of those essential questions. Now, those essential questions are built and they're balanced in a way so that we can ensure that all of our students, not just over the course of a year, but over the course of their entire time at ISLA Academy, get all of the major concepts that they would get in any other traditional school. These units and these essential questions are built around the backbone of the same types of standards that you might have followed if you were still living back in your hometown or if you were forcing your child to wear a uniform at one of these old schools in this community. They follow the exact same standards, but here we allow our students to come to their own level of understanding and we allow our students to ask those questions. Now, during each of the weeks 2, 3, and 4, there is the essential question, and each essential question is tied to something at ISLA we call a core skill. No matter what content you learn, no matter what level of understanding you learn about that content, whether it's community, whether it's the cell, whether it's political systems or ancient Rome, these are units that we do here at ISLA, you are going to come out of that unit with a learning skill that you can take with you to any other place in the world or to learn anything else that you want. These 6 skills we rotate throughout the year, so we make sure that every unit, whether the kid learns a ton about light or doesn't learn a lot about light, they still are going to get access to some of the very important skills that we believe are super important for them to be able to go off and do all of the great things all over the world. And these include things like media literacy or project management, practical life skills, organization, and critical thinking. Every unit also includes integrated subjects like literature, and writing and math. And we also have outside elective courses like art and sometimes music, outdoor learning, sports, and Spanish. All of those subject areas are also connected to our unit. Even though your child may leave the classroom of Miss Rachel and go to another space to learn sports with someone who is focused on sports, or to another classroom for Spanish with someone who's focused on Spanish, those teachers are collaborating with your child's teacher to make sure that what happens in Miss Rachel's room and what happens in that room is connected. And students never feel that that big idea and what they're learning for those 6 weeks just disappears as soon as I start learning this other area. In fact, it is a common question for us to get. One of my favorite questions is when a student will ask us, when are we going to do, and they'll name a school subject, because they sometimes don't realize that they've been doing that all along. And in their previous school, the only time they got to study history or geography was when the class teacher sent them to another place or broke out a different book. But at ISLA, every single thing is connected. And you can not just connect it across these subject areas, but also within your real life. One of the things that I think is so important for very successful students at ISLA is that their parents are also following the unit. And that doesn't mean that you have to do homework with your kid. That does not mean you have to force them to complete worksheets, but it does mean that when you are having conversations with your kid at the dinner table, if you know that what we're talking about is community life and all the people that help make this community work, or you know that what we're talking about is cultural identity, and you can find opportunities to make that real for them, then when they come back here, they're really going to have incredible ideas and ways to discuss that in this space. The other thing that most people know us for is something that we do at the end of the unit. Remember, I've done the hook, I've done weeks 2, 3, and 4, which are the essential questions. But what about the 6 weeks? Well, at the end of the unit, we do something called presentation day. If you've never been to presentation day, just wait. Presentation day is an opportunity where you will get to see not only your child's work and their learning and their creativity and their ideas, but every single kid's amazing accomplishments over the last 6 weeks. Our preschoolers, our elementary students, our middle school, and our high school all present at presentation day, and they all do it on the same day. It's such a beautiful moment, and it takes a lot of work to do that. Throughout the course of those 6 weeks, each student or each class is preparing something big for that day. Not only for the first part of the day, which is a showcase where families get to see all the students, but also for the second part of the day where you get to go into the classrooms and actually see their work. Oftentimes, week 5 is totally reserved for trying to finish up everything that we've been building towards. And then when we present our work to our teachers and our classmates for feedback, week 6 is all about fixing, revising, editing, and getting ready for the big day. After presentation day, our unit is not over, because every unit also includes something called reflection, where we figure out what went well, we figure out what didn't go so well, what we want to improve upon, and then we get ready for the next one. And I missed one other piece of every unit, and it always ends with something that we call celebration day. Whenever we finish our 6-week unit, you will hear your kids talking about what's happening the day after presentation day. It's usually a big party or a trip or something really exciting, because we want them to feel joy in the things that they achieved over the previous 6 weeks and get ready for a brand new unit that is totally different, but often in some way linked when they come back the following Monday. In addition to those things, we personalize our learning for all students. And I'm glad that you're here, because I want to make sure that it is very clear to you what that means. I do not design a reading course or a writing course or a math course for a faceless 9-year-old child. That is not how it works here. Instead, what we do, all of our teachers that are lead teachers here are experts in their field. Over the course of these first few weeks, they have been evaluating your students' reading level, their math level, and their writing level. Whenever they find out what their instructional level is, not their grade level, but their instructional level, that they are going to design small group learning activities for your child and other students that are at similar levels. And what that means is that if your child needs more reinforcement in an area than other students in the room, then they'll be working at their level. But it also means if your child is running fast and way ahead of the game, they're also able to do that. And I think that's super important to recognize, especially if you have children of young, if you are parents of young children. When they're young in a kindergarten class, this is the norm. It is the norm for teachers not to stand in front of the room and teach everyone the same thing. But as they get older, something changes in school where instead of having someone that meets each student where they're at, they start sending them to different classes that are totally disconnected. And then everyone does the same thing. And I find so often when I meet students that are coming here at 7th grade, 8th grade, 9th grade, they'll tell me things that they can't do. They'll tell me things that they're bad at. I'm bad at math. I can't learn language. And that is because instead of being able to learn the skills that they needed to learn, they were instead just passed through without ever gaining the fundamental skills. And we're not going to let that happen here. Every Monday, the teachers are doing small group reading assessments. And every Tuesday and Thursday, they're doing small group targeted math assessments. And every Wednesday, they're doing small group targeted writing assessments. On Friday, they're checking into the skills that they learned in the essential questions and their final projects throughout the unit. Every single day, your kid is getting an expert level teacher who is seeing them where they're at and making sure that when they move into the next meeting with that kid, they have redesigned the purpose, the scope, and the sequence of that learning for them. It's really, really critical. And I think what ends up happening is we graduate students at ISLA that understand where they're at, what skills they need to work on, and how to do it. They don't just pretend that they are somewhere that they're not or that they can't do something. And I think that's the most important. When we are parents who have all left our home countries, typically we have started different ideas and different projects and different businesses, and we understood what we had to learn. We understood that we had to learn something new. At ISLA, it's so much more important to me to make sure that our students don't just learn a set of facts, but instead that they learn how to learn. And I think it's really critical. And the other couple of words that I want to make sure that you know, and I've already made one video about this, you've probably heard the term phases, right? Because we don't want to use that grade level term, because even by using a grade level term or even having a class where everyone is around the same birth date, the culture in the room will be such that even though our ideal is to meet each kid where they're at, kids start feeling like, but I'm in 7th grade, but you're in 7th grade. Who's better? Who's worse? What can I do? What can you do? In a mixed grade class, and especially with kids from all over the world, not only do our students recognize that, but our teachers recognize that. Our teachers cannot walk into any room and feel like they can speak to everyone at the exact same level. They've got to target their instruction to it. That's another big element of what we do. That's what ISLA is all about, is basing our instruction and what we talk about around the questions. You'll see things like be kind, be caring, and be original up there. These are the only 3 school agreements that we have. We don't call them rules, we call them agreements, and everything we do is linked to it. You might be wondering how your kid's going to get graded. What does it mean if my kid shows up from the Netherlands and they're learning this, and then this other kid's from France, and then this other kid's Dominican, this other kid's from Canada? How are they going to grade? Isn't that what school is all about? I'll talk to you about that as well in another video, but that is about the learner characteristics that we use and how we measure each student, not just in their academic level, but in a holistic form. And our kids come to understand that too. They're not just top students, but they are looking to be better in collaboration or in organization or in creativity. If you were a successful student when you were young, do you remember how little your teachers cared about whether or not you improved some of those very important skills? And in fact, if you were very precocious and ahead, you often were left without having to work on anything. I remember what that's like. Again, there's so much to go through. I know that it sometimes can feel overwhelming because it seems like a lot of vocabulary, but the one thing I just want to make sure that everybody remembers is it's not that different from what we all did, except for the feeling. The feeling should be different. When the kids come in here, it should feel very different. If you've ever gone back and visited your old school, you walk through the hallways, there was probably a feeling that came over your body. That feeling doesn't exist here. And it takes a lot of work and a lot of structure to make sure that we don't let that creep in here. I thank you so much for supporting this. I'm here. I think you're going to love these teachers. This is our best group ever. They're going to be in their classrooms. If you don't know where your child's classroom is yet, I doubt it for most of you, but if you don't, we can make sure that you find it. And again, we'll be here as long as you need to answer any questions you have. Thank you so much. Bienvenidos.